Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Literary License Podcast 2-for-1 episodes, where we look at 2 films and discuss the themes of the month with your special co-host, Vicky Ray, John Wilson, and Keith Shago, coming at you from the UK and USA.
Sit down.
Hello, welcome to Literary License Podcast, and today we're discussing The Night of the Hunter, the 1955 classic, and Looper 2012, which is a modern classic. And today we have John Wilson finally back with us. Hello, John.
Hi, folks. I've missed you.
Unfortunately, Vicky's not with us today, but she should be with us tomorrow, and you can hear all about her exploits at that time. And, of course, we are at our favorite part of this where we get to talk about ourselves. So what we're talking about is our roses and thorns of the week. So, John, what are your roses and thorns of the week?
So I'm going to start with the thorns. So my biggest thorns is, people not listening to people about important things, like this little virus that's going around. Stay home, people. I think I'm an expert at being antisocial, so I think it becomes a little bit easier for me to be socially distanced. But just because you're socially distanced doesn't mean you need to be antisocial. So my biggest beef is, I even saw some video posts around these people on spring break, like partying, going, yeah, I'm not going to let it slow me down. I'm going to get my drink on. And in my mind, all I could think about was, well, you're probably not going to only catch Corona on your trip there. So, so that's my biggest beef.
I guess it's something different, because normally they would just bring back gonorrhea or chlamydia.
Exactly,
so,
right?
They're getting something else this time.
Like, woo, I got Corona now instead of chlamydia. Woo, yeah. And then my roses. Well, actually, I have you, Keith, to thank for this. Is it Ori? Is it pronounced Ori? Am I pronouncing it right? Ori is so beautifully done. It's a game that Keith had actually mentioned for me to play. It's on Xbox right now, on the Game Pass. So if you have Xbox and you have Game Pass, it's actually free right now. And the sequel actually just came out. So I'm playing the first one, which came out in 2015, I think, right? 2016?
Yeah, not that long ago, yeah.
Yeah. And it's just beautifully done. The music, the artistry, and there's very little words. There's no there's dialogue, but it's kind of like cryptically, it's such a beautiful game. It's so well done. And I'm trying to pace myself. I've been plowing through that game because I definitely want to get to the next one, but I want to get everything. So I'm trying to collect everything and get all the points to level him up. And it's just it reaches into your heart, especially like you said, the expressions that he makes and the way he looks and the way he sounds. It's just
his adopted mother.
I know. It's so beautiful. I know. And it's heart wrenching too. So just forewarning, there's these touching moments, but there's a lot of heartbreaking moments in it too. So
what I quite liked about Ori is that it is a platform that's beautifully done with a lot of emotion, and it's all done, and the music is beautiful. It's got some of the most beautiful music I've ever seen in a computer game. Yeah. And there are times you just go, oh. Yeah. And I'm actually, what I did was I owned the first one anyway, and I played it in 2015, and I knew the sequel was coming out. And people, if you have Xbox and you're a big Xboxer, get the Xbox Game Pass because you really can't go wrong with that.
It's totally worth it, especially if you plow through games. Like I plow through games like crazy, so it's like cool that you can just go on and there's something new for you to enjoy.
And it's also you can everything ends up coming. I mean, Kingdom Hearts is on there at the moment, so that was a bit of a surprise for me. But then of course you would have to wait a year for that to come out. But sometimes you even get like stuff that are just coming out, and the date they come out, they're on Game Pass, so it's really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ori is got a special place. But when it came back out on Game Pass, and I knew the sequels coming out, I replayed the first one, and it had the second way through it. Had the same emotions for me, and I have to sit there and say that it's not an easy game though.
No, it isn't. I'm actually stuck. I don't know I think I'm probably like 80% through the game, but I'm stuck on this. Part of the challenge of the game is once something is activated, you got to just go, and you have to move so quickly and be able to trigger the actions of the character in order to progress through that section. But you die. I mean, I died like I don't know how many freaking times. I mean, this section that I'm trying to get through is when the bird comes and is trying to like go through the fire. That section. I remember,
the great big owl.
My neighbors must think that I'm getting into fights with someone because I'm literally sitting on my sofa going, well, fuck this shit. Oh my God. And I just get so mad. And I'm like, okay, let me try again. Damn it. And I'm like, I just stop. But it's one of those where, again, it's so beautifully done. I mean, even just the color landscaping and how the transitions of colors when they switch, the emotions, there's emotions that are invoked in it through the color landscaping that I think is really fascinating, that how they came up with all that. And it's just a beautifully done game. Yeah. What about you?
My thorn of the week is basically people who pay attention to misinformation. This basically has to do with coronavirus. As people know, I do work in a hospital, and I've been doing, I'm frontline staff doing this at the moment. And the misinformation that I'm finding with news programs and social media is maddening. And I do think that if people want to educate themselves, please don't use news media or use social media to educate yourself about self-isolation and what it means, and basically if you're at risk. Go on the CDC websites and the WHO websites, and they'll give you clear-cut instructions about exactly what you need to do without adding the hysteria to go along with it. Yeah. I think that what people need to realize is that news broadcasts in general have been losing a lot of money. People have not been paying attention. Since the coronavirus, they are actually getting higher ratings than they did during the O.J. Simpson trial. So if people keep that in mind, they'll know what's going on. And the thing is, we're at a point in our society where you don't need opinions at the moment. You just need cold, hard facts. And use a bit of common sense and use your own conscientiousness about everything. And I think that everyone will come out of this okay.
Yeah, and you know what spreads faster than the coronavirus? Fear. So realize
stupidity as well.
Yeah, and fear stems a lot from the unknown. So I think it's warranted, right? If you don't know, but like Keith said, educate yourself. If you have doctor friends, like my friend Keith, or you have friends who can help educate you and give you the clarity of mind, it demystifies that fear, and it helps you even to actually share that information with others, but to point them in the right direction, right? Always continually pointing them to the professionals, because you would not go and have a florist tell you how to fix your car if they're not a mechanic, right? So you need the experts. The news people are there to promote news, but also promote ratings. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, most definitely. And I do think that, Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche came out with a famous saying that if you want to control a country, keep them in fear. Yeah. So if you keep that in the back of your mind, then I think you can sit there and deviate what truth, fact, and fiction are, sort of thing. So, so that's been a thorn in my side. But I'm doing my best to re-educate the 600 patient or the 3,000 swabs I did this week. Wow. and all the patients been calling in. So yeah. So, and anyone who knows me on Facebook, if you want to sit there and ask for any advice, I'll be more than happy to give it. Just as long, I'd rather have people And just remember, folks, that self-isolation is not about protecting yourself. It's protecting society and protecting the vulnerable.
Yep.
So, the thing is that people talk about community and about joining together. And then we're at a perfect time in our lives that we can actually do this and look out for one another. So
Yep.
use a bit of sensibility, and it's not about self-preservation, folks. So stop buying the toilet paper.
Yeah.
And my rose is the flip coin of yours, John, which is Ori the sequel.
Yay!
Oh my God! Oh.
Please don't give too much away because I haven't played it yet.
I will. The only thing I say that the only thing I will say that that you will find in the trailer is that Ori has an owl friend.
Oh.
And, oh my God! It's what I like about Ori also is that I'll do it, and when I get frustrated, I'll put it down and I'll come back to it the next day, and then I'm seeming to be better at it. And I like the learning curve of it and everything. The only problem I have with this version is that the first one you pretty much knew where to go, and this one you're kind of open where you can go. And I did find myself probably for 2 days in the wrong area at the wrong time, and I had to fight my way all the way back. So that was a bit annoying, but at the same time, it's so beautiful. So that is my high point. And I guess if I had to have a second rose here on Netflix, and all you people who are isolated in the UK and Netflix, all the German animated films done by the Ghibli Studios, which also includes Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke and so on and so forth. If you really want a treat, watch these films. They're the most I've been watching one, and I come home from work after being totally stressed, and I watch one, and I've never seen such beautiful films put together.
Yeah.
And I have, there's a lot of, and as I tell the patients, something happened, you're isolated, and or you had the coronavirus, and they ask me what's the first thing they should do. I go, make sure that your Netflix is paid up.
Yes, exactly.
Pay up your Netflix.
And by the way, pace yourself, because if you're especially watching series, you want to enjoy it and savor it. So you don't want to just plow through things. I do say one of the easiest series that I think I've ever watched on there is I'm Not Okay With This.
Oh, and that was brilliant.
It came out recently. It's 7 episodes. They're 20 minutes each. It's so good, so brilliant, so funny. Yeah. So I recommend that.
Yeah. No. So I guess that brings us to our first film that we're discussing is Night of the Hunter, which is a 1955 American thriller film directed by Charles Laughton, the famous Shakespearean actor. And it's starring Robert Mitchum, Shelly Winters, and Lillian Gish. The screenplay by James Agee was based on the 1953 novel The Same Title by Davis Grubb. The plot focuses on a corrupt minister turned serial killer who attempts to charm an unsuspecting widow and steal $10,000 hidden by her executed husband. The novel and film do draw on the true story of Harry Powers, who was hanged in 1932 for the murders of 2 widows and 3 children in Clarksburg, West Virginia. The film's lyrical and expressionistic style, with its leanings on the silent era, sets it apart from the other Hollywood films of the 1940s and 50s, and has influenced later directors such as Rainer Fassbinder and Robert Altman. In 1992, Night Hunter was deemed culturally historical and ethnically significant by the United States Library of Congress, and was selected for the preservation in the National Film Registry. The influential film magazine Cahiers du Cinéma selected The Night of the Hunter in 2008 as the second best film of all time behind Citizen Kane. So, John, what are your thoughts of The Night of the Hunter?
I actually liked it. I mean, because I never have seen so many different stylistic things going on in a film, and I was wondering how and why it all kind of merges together the way it does. And then just like going on to add to what Keith was talking about, Laughton and Grubb they hit it off immediately together once they kind of explored the story. And Grubb actually has experience in doing illustration, so he did some storyboarding for the film, and sort of some of those ideas came to life that way in those conversations. And so it was, as Keith had mentioned, it was from the silent pictures, and that it makes so much sense that once you know the context of it, because I only knew that afterwards. I was like, oh, so that's why there were certain scenes that were shot the way they were. the German expressionism, which I didn't know about that as well, but I kind of looked more into the stylistics of that and was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. Noir, how noir is actually really takes presence in this film. I have to say that even it's like the level of acting, aside from the children would just, well, I shouldn't say the children. I should say the girl. The girl drove me crazy. I just wanted to slap her and put her down a well or something, But
Pearl.
Oh God,
Pearl, don't you tell him, Pearl.
Yeah. But like some of the actors that were in consideration of the Reverend were Gary Cooper, Laurence Olivier, and some of the actresses for Willa were Agnes Moorehead, Grace Kelly, Betty Grable. Like, I find the women more interesting because I'm thinking, Agnes Moorehead, I could see it, but then I can't see it with that character,
I guess we have to kind of think of her outside of her Endora persona.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, but can you picture her as like, she's very Lilith, right? She's very like, battling the inner good and evil inside of her. That's what this film is mainly about, is the good versus evil, which why I think it actually was kind of hit by the studio, by these the Protestant groups, because they did not like the portrayal of how the Reverend was. And so in order to kind of get through the guidelines of things when it came to that from the studio's perspective, they just really painted him as not a real minister. He was more of like a pretend would-be minister in order to get his way in the door with these women. So, but yeah, I thought the film was very interesting. Again, some of it was a little disjointed because I felt like part of it was maybe the editing. I don't know if you agree with me on that or not, but like the editing and some of the scenes was really off, because you have these long, especially in the opening, these long sweepings of the town, and you see like an aerial view, which I'd love to know how they shot it, because it literally looks like a drone is coming down on the town. And then you get the town, right? And then all of a sudden it's like it goes back up, and then you come back down, and it's like these really weird sort of shots that are put together.
I found the film, first of all, I can understand why the film didn't make its money back when it came out, because it's quite a risque film considering it for the time period that this film was released.
Yeah.
And I also found that this film has so many iconic images that you see in it that you're so familiar with, but you never knew where they came from, like the love-hate on the knuckles of Robert Mitchum's character. And there's that famous picture of Robert Mitchum that you do see whenever they mention Robert Mitchum. It's him at the gate with his, the love-hate on his hands. And, he's there with this outfit on, and you're thinking, oh my God, this is where this is from. But it's, I kind of do agree that they consider this a nightmarish Mother Goose story. And I had to sit there and say that there's nothing in this scene that's easy, in this film that's easy. You start off with basically, a woman dead in a cellar that kids find her, and you basically see her feet. Sort of thing. And then all of a sudden we get that sweeping shot of the neighborhood, and then we corner into these two kids playing. And then what we seem to also get is then all of a sudden we get the father who shows up. And the thing is that we're not getting a father who's a hero. We're getting a father who robbed a bank and killed somebody.
Yeah.
And which is kind of like, it's a bit off really, because there's no real heroes in this piece at all. There's no one to root for, because even when they take him away, and then basically we have the mother goes, taking her kids, and the mother's quite influential. She's kind of weak, sort of thing. So we don't have a strong mothering character to taking care of her children. She's doing what she can to get by. And then of course the husband gets sentenced to prison, to execution, and then we get and during this time we get Robert Mitchum's character entering, and we find out that he has a thing against women, and his idea is that women are just horrors, and there's no such thing as the virgin women. So he kills them for their money, but he also kills them because he thinks women are nothing but sin, which is quite a very interesting thing. But then there's this charisma about him where he can woo everybody.
Yeah, in fact, the whole town basically.
And I love the way that they just set that up. I do think the boy is fantastic. I will give my hats off to the boy. I think unfortunately he was Billy Chaplin, who plays John Harper, was known as one of these children prodigy actors. He was such a naturalistic actor. Mm-hmm. And what Charles Laughton would do is go, okay, now do it this way, and he would just do it that way, and he'd have and then let's try it this way, and he'd just do it that way. I do think that Sally Jane Bruce, Pearl, I do think that they kind of went more for cute sort of thing. And I'm not quite sure if her irritability has more to do with her as an actress, or it has to do with the simple fact that she's kind of like a Shirley Temple-esque kind of character stuck in this kind of Southern Gothic film, I guess. And even her accent, which does, I mean, to be honest, her accent does fit the time and place of where it's set, but it almost feels like she was dubbed. There's always this kind of weird thing about the way that she's portrayed, but at the same time, something interesting about her. But you are left wondering. It's like, I mean, when John takes over the scenes, it's kind of like you get Pearl, and we basically get John and Pearl. But then I guess it's with those scenes where she's with Robert Mitchum. It's like, don't worry, John, I won't tell. Right, like in front, and you're getting it. But I don't know if it's an ingenious way of doing this, because whenever Pearl was with anybody, you thought that she was on the verge of like spilling everything about where the money is, and so it good at that point. And you always thought that she was the one that's going to give everything away. But it's kind of so you're kind of left feeling that if Pearl's character was she done this on purpose, as far as filming her like this on purpose? So therefore you're always on edge when she was on screen. So it was kind of a weird thing. So I do kind of agree with you, but then if I play devil's advocate, I look at the other way, it kind of does fit.
Yeah,
but her acting style doesn't fit with everyone else's, though. I think that's another problem.
Yeah, well, that's what was a little bit disjointing too, and I was also trying to place her in age, because I'm assuming she's 5.
Yes, 6? That's how I.
So I was trying to be patient with that too. Like, she's naive. Like when she's sitting on the ground and she's literally cutting the money up into paper dolls. Like I was like, oh my God, what are you doing? I would kill her, But it's like she's young, she's a child, right? And the naivety of a child that would do something like that, and the being trusting, right? So she went to automatically really trusting Harry, or was it Harry? Yeah, Harry. Yeah. Trusting him and just being like, Daddy, like immediately calling him Daddy. I was like, what the hell? Like the guy just literally married your mom, like literally like a day ago. But then again, that's also small town living, just as much as I forget who is the woman that was trying to get
Evelyn Varden.
Yes.
And if Evelyn Varden, if you remember, My Little Rhoda from The Bad Seed.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
It's actually great to see her again, actually. She's actually fantastic, and she's such an interesting character, and her poor husband.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I mean, it was interesting to see her convincing this woman, like, you have to do right by these kids. Your husband was a bum. Like, this is such a nice man. Marry him. And it's like, you just met the man, but that was small town living back then. And you were to be
honest, I think that was just women's roles, isn't it? That you can't do this on your own. You need a man.
You need a man to support you. Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought that what I quite found interesting about The Hunter, I do find that the social commentary that we are getting is very, very interesting, because we get this idea of how life should be. And of course, it's not like this. We get Shelly Winters. I think I have to sit there and say that I always kind of knew her. And of course, I mean, Shelly Winters for me is like Who Slew Auntie Roo and The Poseidon Adventure.
Yeah.
And so I never actually saw her as like a younger actress. And I have to sit there and say that, I know that, you know, when you read about Shelly Winters, you know that she went to this, you know, fantastic acting dramatic school and stuff like this. But I never actually saw it because I saw the caricature Shelly Winters that we tend to get.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, if I didn't know it was her, I wouldn't have guessed it was her.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I think why when she auditioned for this role, she really liked the role because it was very different from anything she's ever had to really play. Mm-hmm. And she even was saying how the line towards when basically, you know, spoiler, obviously alert, before, you know, Harry kills her was this very, she knew what was happening. She knew, and it was almost like preparing. And even with that scene, the way it's set up, and I was reading more about it, I had to go back and watch it. But like, if you look at the scene, the room is set up like a steeple, like a church. The way she's laying in bed, the lighting, it looks like she has a halo over her head. So it's this very angelic, serene sort of like, I've been trying to do the right thing. And then she realized she's been duped by the devil. Right. And so she's now accepted her fate. And so that line, it's not something I think most of us are used to from her, that type of character actress. It's very serene and very surreal, you know.
I also like the simple fact is that the way he tore her down and what she would do to make sure that she held on to her man and the extent that she went to. We open up with her as like the mother who's working all hours under the sun, and she's working in an ice cream shop. So I'm assuming that she's just making slightly enough to get by. Because I mean, the kids are not wandering around with new clothes, and you know, even like, oh no, you know, they can't afford candy, and you know, the brother's taking care of this, you know, the younger sister. And then when we get Harry mentioned into Robert Mitchum's character, I thought it was quite interesting to be able to, you know, oh no, I really shouldn't, you know, my older son doesn't like it, and she's getting pushed into it. So we get this woman who's kind of easily pushed into a situation, and then we get the systematic breakdown of a weak woman and how he systematically breaks her down, like on the wedding night. They get married and basically he refuses to touch her, or he refuses to have sex with her, and then to call her out of it, it goes, you know, and it makes her feel dirty and useless. And so
it's like you're meant to, you know, have children. Do you want more children? Is that why you're doing it? Like basically, if you're doing it for sex, you're doing it for the wrong reason. But if you want to have a child, I'll give you a child. And she's like, no, like I don't want no more kids. I'm good, you know.
Well, and the reason why he does, you know, that's quite interesting because the reason, you know, it's like he does that because it's like if she just wants sex, then she's a dirty, impure person. Yeah. And the thing is, and I thought it was quite interesting that with her character, she's always thinking about, you know, God, and we need, you know, and I'm trying to be godly. My husband, you know, has been executed for murder. He killed and shot people. So I need to atone for his sins. So for me to atone for my sins, therefore my kids won't have those. Because, you know, the kids are being ostracized wherever they go.
Yeah.
To the simple fact, like even townspeople are going, where's the money? I bet you know where that money is, sort of thing.
Well, and then the fact that she kind of gets that from him, that's saying like, oh, well, your husband actually threw the money into the river. He couldn't live with his sin. And she just was like, oh my God, I have to tell everyone that my husband did it. He threw the money into the river. You know, he washed away my sins, you know, and it was like, I think she was probably looking for that salvation for herself. But the interesting thing about this movie too is we know nothing. We have no backstory about any of these people. No. We're kind of just thrown into the situation where the husband comes running up to the house. He's robbed a bank. We don't know why. We assume it's a desperation of not having money. Is you know, the wife, again, she works in, like you said, possibly a soda shop or some type of ice cream store. But it's like we know nothing beyond that of these characters, you know.
And we're also in an area where we're in the middle of, I'm assuming we're in the middle of the Depression.
Yeah.
So therefore money is very, very non-existent. So I think, you know, the father does say something while he's in prison, that to the simple fact that he was sick of scraping to get by and not being able to provide food for his children. So he went to this length. So I imagine that he didn't wake up one day and didn't have any money. I imagine that it probably was a long period of time. And that's what's quite interesting with The Night of Hunter. I've seen this film quite a few times. I even bought the Blu-ray because there's something about this film I really do love. I don't know exactly what it is, but it tends to capture me. And every time I watch it, I always pick up more and more information from it. And it's kind of an odd thing.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. Sorry, it's a funny thing you mentioned that with the money, because then if you really wanted your family to have it, he must have not trusted his wife, right? Like normally you would say to your kids, I'm going to put this here. The first time you see mom and you get her alone, make sure she knows where it's at. Like here, you know. So it's interesting. He wanted to take care of his kids, but his wife was like, you know. Like,
well, this is what's interesting about that whole thing is because when he does tell John, don't tell anyone about the money and don't even tell your mom because she's a silly woman. And you're thinking to yourself like, huh? I mean, you know what I mean? It's like these, and that's what's quite interesting about this movie is like, you know, the more times you see it, it's like you start picking up on some of this dialogue and you're like, oh, you know what I mean? Like the first time I saw it, I was like, I didn't quite figure it out. Second time I was like, then I heard that line. I was like, okay. And then, you know, and then, okay, and then the story goes on, it makes sense. And then I guess, and the thing is, she does prove to be a silly woman because if John did tell her where the money is, she would have handed everything over.
True. Yeah.
And she probably would have handed over to Harry, you know, who basically would have killed her anyway, because that's what he did. He killed women and children. That's what it's based on. And so it's quite, it's just so kind of interesting. And the way that Christianity, how everyone's searching for some kind of religious clarification and salvation using God, and how someone can come in using the word of God to be able to mesmerize someone, but at the same time tear them down. And what I thought was very good is that after you see them married and you get that one scene, and I think the movie does suffer that we don't know what time frames are here. We tend to jump from one scene to another.
Because so we don't know if it's like days or if it's one day and a night. Like it's, Because
what we do basically get is that we get her, you know, he refuses to have sex with her. He turns his back on her. The next scene we have her is basically, she's now the preacher's wife screaming about damnation and sin and how he had saved her from the holy gates of hell and all this other stuff. And then of course she walks in with him, you know, getting ready to beat on the children. And then of course she gets killed. And I have to sit there and say the most fantastic corpse scene in the world is her underneath the water.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Because you don't get to see him kill her. And then you're kind of like, oh, so I guess we're not going to see anything after that. And then, you know, he takes her away, and then he tells everyone, oh, she left town. She just went to find sin and she left the kids with me. And then it's that scene where, what is his name? The uncle, or is it the uncle or the friend or whatever? He's like fishing. And you just see that, you see her in the water and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so creepy and eerie. And the music is so creepy and eerie. I mean, the song of the little girl, I did actually say I liked that one. That was nice when she's in the boat and she's
thank God it wasn't her who sang it. So
no, I know.
It's like really good with her voice. You're like, ooh.
Yeah, and it was.
She's got a strong female vocal coming out of those pipes.
She's like, all of a sudden the frog starts singing, oh, you know, the frog on the bank. Yeah.
But you know what I thought was quite interesting is that, and this is where, you know, this, I think this also plays with what you were saying is that when she does disappear, we get Icy Spoon. I mean, the husband, Walt Spoon, which is Icy's husband, he kind of, you know, he's kind of sits back, and I think he sees things for what they are. But unfortunately, you know, he's the henpecked husband, you know, and she knows, you know, Shelly Winters' character. She's worked with her. She, you know, you assume that they're friends, Willa Harper, and she accepts this excuse that she would just leave her children to run off.
Well, maybe she knows her silly behavior, or what did her husband call her? He knows that she's very, like, she's always trying to steer her by the hand of God, because she's like that too. But maybe she's always went this other direction, and when someone that was said, it was like, oh, that, you know, because that could have insinuated that she gambled the money away or she drank the money away. Like, so maybe his behavior we didn't know, you know.
Yeah, I just found it a bit weird that she just was so accepting of it, and of course, but then again, she spends a lot of time flirting with him as well. So
Yeah, true.
which is kind of an odd thing. And then, and then the film does change, which I do like this passage is when he decides that he's going to do away with the children, and when he actually finds out where the money's hidden, and the kids run away, and they try to get their uncle Uncle Bertie to help them, and of course Uncle Bertie's a drunk because of what he's seeing, because he thinks that basically they're going to blame him for everything. And they get in the boat, and then you get this wonderful sequence of them getting away, and then him following. And I thought that was really well filmed.
Yeah.
And then of course we get to, and this is a kind of story that's done in like 4 acts, I would sit there and say. The first act basically being the father, the second act basically being the courting of the mom, the third act basically them getting away, and the fourth act when Lillian Gish comes on the scene.
Yeah.
Lillian Gish, for people who don't know much about cinema, Lillian Gish was basically one of the biggest Hollywood actresses of the silent era. Yeah. And I think Lillian Gish's last film was with Bette Davis. Wasn't it Whales of August?
I think so.
So this woman had like a career from like the 1920s all the way to like 1989. But the thing is, when you see her, she comes across like Grandma Walton.
Yeah.
And which is not a bad thing. This is not a criticism. This is actually a good thing. And the thing is, Lillian Gish is one of these characters that you always know their name, but you never really see, you don't know, because I don't watch silent films.
From 1912 to 1987. So that's her, but yeah. So 1912 is in silent film shorts. Yeah. Whew.
And she was the biggest thing. I mean, she was giving Mary Pickford a run for her money. I mean, she was like the Bette Davis of Oscars, as far as, Lillian Gish would win all these awards as well. And it's kind of good to actually see her and actually realize, you can see how she is a legend of her, sort of thing, because the way that she commands the scene, I love the way that there's this harshness to her, but there's also this beauty about her. She's taking all these kids in, and kids that have no home, and she protects them, and she's strict with them, but loving at the same time. And I have to sit there and say that I'm not sure if many actors would have been able to pull that off, that kind of gray performance out, I guess to say, because her character's not black or white. There's an area of gray, and the way that she'll do anything, she's like a mother hen who'll do anything to, I guess let's call her a swan, because swans will basically, if you go after the chicks, they will break your arm with their wings. Yeah. And she's that kind of person. And I thought that
she has a sternness, but she's got a soft and delicate side. Yes. Yeah.
And I love the way that she's able, and I love that, that Charles Laughton with this whole story takes the Bible, and here we are, we got the badness of religion and stuff like this. And then she's got religion and how she turns it into like moral lessons, and there's like a beauty to it. Yeah. And I had to sit there and say that by the time we get to the end of the film and, and what happens, I have to sit there and say that the way that it does portray religion is quite interesting, because we got like the evil minister who's killing women, using the word of God in a way to like diminish women and he wants and kill people to get money. And then you got another woman who's taking the stories of God and turning it into like lessons to learn and how you have to love one another. Yeah. And I thought that was an interesting juxtaposition that you don't normally get. Normally films don't really handle things like that. It's either one way or another. Yeah.
And then you also have to, don't forget the town coming to basically kill him, which is a great scene, by the way, because you're like, okay, didn't expect that to come, because they literally pillage the shop and like take anything out of the shop to come after this man and like go after him.
Mm. Well, I also think that, and I found what was really interesting is the young girl who played Ruby, Gloria Castillo. Her character is, she's what, 17? And he comes on to her, and there's this weird sexual thing going on there that he's like drawing her into the web. And the thing is that when Lillian Gish's character finds out about it, that she handles that is really well done. She doesn't, I think most people, normally what we get in the film is like, okay, you acted this way, you sinful girl, da da. But she doesn't call her out on her sin. She says, "Oh dear, you only want to be loved, but you need to be loved by the right person."
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting because you don't normally get that in films. Normally it's just like, da da da, you are sinful, da da da, I'm going to kick you out of my house. How dare you? And it really added a bit of thingy in it. But then when he does show up at the house and Ruby's like gazing at him and she's like, "Oh, you silly girl, get back in the house." It's kind of that's what I quite like about Night of the Hunter. There's like, it has its own pacing and its own weird, as you're saying, weird editing situation that goes on to it, but it's like these little snippets that are kind of all connected together. And then I guess it reminds me of a George Seurat painting. And George Seurat is, I guess, if anyone knows Sunday in the Park with George or anything like that, he used to be basically painting with just dots. And the thing is, you get close to it and you look at the dots, but then when you step away from it, you actually see the full picture. And that's what kind of reminds me of Night of the Hunter. It has that full, you have like this huge story and it's filmed in 4 different parts. And when you kind of look at it close, it doesn't really hang together. But then when you step away from it, it's like actually everything just loops around. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say though the ending was a little fast paced for me because I was expecting something else, or like it was just kind of like, boom, the police come and take him away. And by the way, I did not expect the son to like react the way he did, but it makes sense because he witnessed his father being, apprehended. But then it goes boom to that, boom to the courthouse, boom to the town where they're sitting and having ice creams at the shop, to running away from the ice cream shop, to now we're having Christmas at the woman's home and they're all celebrating. I'm like, wait, what just happened? Like we just jumped. Like there was like this huge jump, and it's like, it was meant to be like, they're all fine now. They're happy. They're in good hands. They're together. But it was just a leap from where we were,
I thought that, I had to sit there and say, it's kind of like, and the film doesn't really lead up to anything. Except I think it's the snippets, and then it kind of like, sort of thing. I did think that was interesting though, is that because he's suckered in this town, and the thing is, they'll do anything for this guy. And of course, when it's proven who this guy is, and how they all just turn against him. Yeah, and it's almost like and I guess watching it in our current time at the moment, and the way that things that we've experienced in the last couple of years, politically, sociologically, and the way that the world's changed. And I found that it was kind of a weird kind of mirror to ourselves, because what we do see is that you got all these people standing up, like, fighting his battle. He's this and this and this. And when it's proven wrong, and all of a sudden they turn against him. Like they're ashamed of their own guilt, that they didn't see anything. And it's the way that the society is going to act now.
Yeah, that they're going to retaliate now against. Yeah,
they're going to retaliate because they were.
Well, but they kept calling him Blue Coat or something. They kept saying Blue Coat.
Yeah, which is like a turncoat.
Oh, because I was like, what does that mean? Because they're all like, blue coat, blue coat. And I was like, okay, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a Southern term meaning, like, it means turncoat. I actually looked that up, folks. It's not that.
I was going to say, well, I mean.
I didn't understand, because I've heard of turncoat. I didn't understand what blue coat was.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, is this something to do with like the Civil War? But,
I didn't think that.
But then the Civil War, didn't the North wore gray and the South wore?
Well, yeah. So Union was gray and South was blue, I think.
So maybe, but I know that does mean turncoat sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
And the reason why, and from what I read, the reason why they use blue coat is because after the Civil War, that they felt such shame within themselves that they retaliated.
Yeah.
So, but I have to sit there and say that I found that very interesting, that society, and especially, the woman, Evelyn Vaughn, Icy Spoon, to marry this man, basically she pushed this woman to her death, really. Yeah. And instead of like going, oh my God, I was wrong about this person, all of a sudden she's the one, of course, starting, the, what they call it when they townspeople go through and they're going to go kill somebody. I forgot what that term is.
Are you talking about pillaging?
No, they don't pillage, but like something happened, and they, someone's murdered, and they all go to the jailhouse, and they're gonna drag him out and kill them themselves. That thing.
Oh yeah,
there's a term for it. I'm sorry.
It'll pop into our brain. Watch.
Yeah, probably when we're discussing Looper. But I mean, and I thought that was very, very interesting. But yeah, I do say that the film does have that very, very quick boom, 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 and it's almost like they are running out of time. And I guess they probably were. Now, I read the novel Night of the Hunter because if people out there have Amazon Kindle, a lot of these old movies, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte, and most of these classic movies, the original novels have all been reissued for some of these classic movies, and I read it, and it was quite interesting. But Night of the Hunter, if you do read it, it's an easy read, but it's done in a Southern style where it's basically like, like Stephen King does his style, where it's just like, an old man on a rocking chair giving you the lingo of Maine.
Yeah.
This is done like somebody in the South, and it's all written like he's telling you, like with the accent and everything like that. So,
wait, so who's the narrator of this then?
It's not really a narrator. It's all done from the third person, but it is written like a country hillbilly.
Hillbilly. Hick sitting on
yeah, but done in the third person. So it's not someone telling you a story. It's just done on like a country hick narrative and done in the third person. So it's quite an interesting read. It's a good read. And I think also because that book does the same jumping thing that this does. It's like,
oh, really?
Yeah,
that's interesting. What's interesting too is Grubb. So he wasn't hired to write this, but Agee, is it Agee?
Yeah.
James Agee. So he wrote it, but he wrote it in 293 pages. And I was like, holy hell, that's the freaking long screenplay. So, but what I liked about it is that Laughton actually rewrote it, but he still gave him credit, and he wanted him to be listed as the main writer for this. So I thought that was great that he gave him kudos, because he probably condensed down what he had wrote. I wondered that because they actually won I was going to say they didn't. The next movie we're going to talk about won a lot of awards for the screenplay, but I was interested about the screenplay and also the book, because having read that it was a novel first, I was like, I wondered if it kind of rode the same lines of the scenes and how it was, how it played out, or if, like you said, if it was done in third person, because I wondered who the narrator was, because as you mentioned, there's no hero in the start of the film. There's no clear declaration of who you're trying to root for. And then when you meet the Reverend, he's an asshole, so he's a villain, but then you're like, well, who are you rooting for? And then you think, well, maybe it's the boy, maybe it's the children, maybe it's the mom. You're kind of always trying to guess who you're rooting for.
I have to say, when I read the book, it's pretty much like the film to a certain extent, to the simple fact is that you are a spectator in what's going on. So basically you're kind of like God. And this is what's also interesting about this film, is that you are kind of God, and you are overseeing everything that's going on. And that's how the book is done as well. And thinking about it now, I guess the film does follow that thing, that basically you're watching everything unfold in front of you, and it's done like it's like almost like you're reflecting back in your memories. So your memories are never clear cut, and you don't have sweeping memories, but they are like snippets, is what I guess is what best word for it.
Yeah.
And that's the way the book's written. So maybe that's the reason why this is the Charles Laughton was going for, because it almost does feel like that, now that we're discussing it, and I guess it's become a bit clear now that we're discussing it, but thinking back on the movie, it does feel like memories.
Yeah.
Because now everything, you can remember things in chronological order, which I have to sit there and say that we discuss a lot of films in the Literary License podcast. And this is probably the one that basically that every single scene that we remember is like a small memory, like the way your memory works.
Yeah.
And and sort of thing. And and the book is like that. So maybe that's what they're trying to come across. Or maybe we're just feeding too much into it.
No, I do agree with you, because I say it in when you watch it, it is a little bit like they're just, like you said, memories. They're like captions of different things going on. And you're kind of like wondering, well, how is this all woven together? And like, where are we going? And then when you get to even between act 3 and 4, it just takes this turn and you're like, where are we going here? And then you see the Reverend going, and he meets up with that posse, and he's trying to convince him, like, hey, I'm on a mission from God. I'm trying to like, there's this like home on the prairie type of scene where he's trying to get to them. And I'm like, how in the hell is he finding these kids? But it's just this like really beautiful scene where, the way it's shot. And apparently like even that scene was a miniature. There was like miniature versions, like a miniature horse and a miniature person. And that's how they shot the scene and stuff. But it still somehow all fits together, because it's, again, they shot a lot of the scenes in West Virginia, but then they shot a lot of the scenes on a sound studio. And that's sort of, a lot of the scenes were on the sound studio was per the director's request, because he wanted certain looks and feels for what he was trying to capture within the German sense, or within the noir sense, within the silent film sense. He knew he could capture that on the studio, but he also had to have that depression, like looking at the world from a country style living. And so he shot a lot of in West Virginia, but somehow he seamlessly kind of weaves it all together, and you have these chunks that fit together like a puzzle.
I also found quite interesting also, because the way that it ends, it's the same way that it begins. So in a way that if you take out that opening with the children's heads or the ending with the children's heads and just wrap the film around, and let's say started back from the beginning and just let it run, you could actually run in a circle with it. Yeah.
And eventually, I think the ending was, the beginning was the ending. I guess the director had said he wanted the children and the angels, or whatever it was, that line was actually at the end, but because they wanted, what's her character name now? They wanted her to have that dialogue to be able to convey that same message.
Rachel Cooper.
Which I loved her, because she would be the sassy, mother, be more like grandmother, right? Because she was way much older than a mother for them. She's the sassy grandmother that you would need to give the discipline, but also give them heart, and to teach them the important lessons of being. And the thing that's beautiful about it is she does believe in them, even though they might not believe in themselves, right? So there's that instillment of like, if you just believe in yourself, like I think that was like a beautiful message.
And I also like that wrong wasn't a black or white scenario for her.
Yeah.
If you do something wrong, then what you need to do is accept it and acknowledge it. And that seems to be her lesson, which I have to sit there and say that's probably a universal lesson, that probably till the end of time sort of thing that people could learn.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're actually forgot to play the trailer for Night of the Hunter. So we're going to play the trailer now, and we'll be back with Looper.
Never told you he throwed it in the river, did he?
I can hear you whispering, children, so I know you're down there. I can feel myself getting awful mad.
Here is all the passion and suspense, the heart-pounding warmth of the best-selling novel that gripped millions.
Burl, wake up! Come on, Burl!
Superb, unforgettable performances by an extraordinary array of talent.
Figured I was gone, huh?
Run, hide in the staircase. Run quick! Ruby, shit! What do you want?
I want them kids.
I'm giving you to the count of 3 to get out of here, then I'm coming across the kitchen shooting you.
The combined powers of Paul Gregory and Charles Laughton brought the Kane Mutiny Court-Martial to Broadway. Now the screen receives that same creative, electrifying impact. The Night of the Hunter.
Hello, welcome back to Literary License Podcast. And now we're going to be discussing Looper, which is a 2012 American science fiction action film written and directed by Rian Johnson and produced by Ram Bergman and James D. Stern. It stars Bruce Willis, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Emily Blunt. It revolves around present-day contract killers called loopers hired by criminal syndicates from the future to terminate victims that they send back through time. Looper was selected as the opening film of the 2012 Toronto International Film Festival and was released in the United States on September 28, 2012. The film received critical acclaim and was a box office success, grossing $176 million worldwide on a $30 million budget. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut away again to the trailer of Looper, and we'll be right back.
So you're me in 30 years.
So I stared into your eyes. It's too strange.
Your face looks backwards. Do you know what's gonna happen? You done all this already? As me?
I don't want to talk about time travel.
We both know how this has to go down. So why don't you do what old men do and die?
Why don't you just take your little gun out between your legs and do it, boy?
In the future, time travel is outlawed, used only in secret by the largest criminal organizations. When they need someone gone and they want to erase any trace of the target ever existing, they use specialized assassins like me, called loopers.
You're a looper?
You know what we do? And the only rule is never let your target escape, even if your target is you. This is not a good thing. My boss will be searching for me till he finds me.
Sweep the streets, get on it.
I'm gonna fix this! I'm gonna find him! I'm gonna kill him!
Hunt them down. But every second that passes is bad.
What's he gonna do?
I'm gonna save your life.
My life! Your life!
I know you're not lying when you say you're gonna kill this guy.
This is like a nightmare. I'm sorry.
Oh my god!
Hello, welcome back. We are discussing Looper, the 2012 film. So, John, what are your thoughts on Looper?
I'm actually a huge time traveler favorite. I love those types of movies. One of the things I read was a comment from the director and talking about producing this movie. His comment was, even though it's a time travel movie, the pleasure of it does not come from the mass of time travel. It's not a film like Primer, for instance, where the big part of the enjoyment is kind of working out all of the integral parts of the movie. For Looper, I very much wanted it to be more about the character-based movie that is more about how these characters dealt with the situation time travel has brought about. So the bigger challenge was figuring out how to not spend the whole movie explaining the rules and figure out how to put it out there in a way that made sense on some intuitive level for the audience, then get past it and deal with the real meat of the story. So I love that, because some movies you get so caught up in the element of time travel that you kind of feel like you're literally living in a paradox. It also had some influences like with Terminator, 12 Monkeys, True Time Crimes, Hard Boiled Wonderland, and The End of the World. I just want to know what that is because I've never ever even heard of that.
I actually never heard of that one. Actually,
I was like, "What?" I mean, I've heard most of these.
Akira, I know,
and it also won a lot of awards for screenplays. So that actually intrigued me because I've never actually read the screenplay, which I want to now. The National Board of Reviews for Best Original Screenplay. And also Best Sci-Fi Horror Movie, Washington, D.C. Film Critics Association of Best Original Screenplay, Austin Film Festival Screenplay, Florida Film Critics Association Original Screenplay. So it won a lot of screenplay awards, and I'm curious to read this now from that context because the movie does a really good job at explaining the characters, and it's very done very simplistically. I love Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
I agree.
JGL, as I would call him shortly. He just did such a great, because it's hard to not only play a character, but for you to actually mimic another actor as a younger version of them is like, they put the prosthetics on him. They were able to kind of make him look like Bruce Willis, but to get his mannerisms down and the way he kind of just does these little things, like the jaw, he has this like jaw thing where he kind of, the way he smiles or smirks, right? Or the way his eyes, the way he's able to focus his eyes and kind of dilate the pupils when a person's looking at him trying to get information. His acting abilities, I love him. I just think he's fantastic. So
I also have to sit there and say that a big hats off to him as well, because he didn't do it like, I think someone else could have done this and made it into a caricature.
Yeah.
Or make it seem a bit off-putting or just not realistic. But with Joseph Gordon-Levitt's portrayal of playing young Joe to Bruce Willis' old Joe, and actually to put them in a scene together is very brave. And he pulls it off. The only thing that I do find a bit disconcerting was the eyebrows sometimes, but that's I think.
Well, but I think nowadays,
odd.
And nowadays too is everything is so CGI'd, and I think now you don't even necessarily need to have an actor play the younger version of you. You just have someone CGI you to the younger version of you.
Well, isn't that what Martin Scorsese did with The Irishman on Netflix?
Yeah. Well, and then you also have like
way too long.
Well, and you also have the one that just was done with Will Smith and like the younger clone version of the older, So
yeah. And I find that I actually find those kind of a bit off-putting actually.
Yeah, because you spend a lot of.
I don't think the CG is fine-tuned enough because it looks a bit odd. So what I mean, it hasn't ironed out yet. Probably in the near future it will be ironed out, but because it seems like this is the way that we're going to be doing this more and more. It seems like this is going to be, it's been used in 2 films now, sort of thing, and it'll just get better and better.
Yeah,
but I do think that this film, if they did that, I don't think you would have the same kind of film. And I think that, Joseph Gordon-Levitt is the bee's knees. I have to sit there and say that, ever since his first role in Dark Shadows, the revival series that he did, and all the way up to even in Halloween H2O, you know what I mean? He's always been someone to watch. Even 10 Things I Hate About You. He's one of these actors that is one day this is going to be the epitome of acting, and this is what actors are going to want to have, the goal that they're going to be. I'm going to be, when I grow up, I want to be Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and you can see this happening with him.
And I got frustrated when Nolan decided that after the 3rd Batman movie, they were not going to continue with him, because I think he would have been an amazing extension of that story and potentially becoming the new Nightwing or whatever. But Nolan, if you're listening, get on it. It could be a whole new 3-movie part. You don't have to you can let the other 3 go and just create a whole new series. I think he's your man.
They could do the whole Nightwing story. I mean, Nightwing's such an interesting character anyway. So.
Yeah. And imagine him trying to fill the shoes of Batman and just going, screw this, I'm going to do what I want to do. Right. And he had that in him, in that character. And so that's my little
Yeah.
Side note.
I actually have to say that when the first time I saw Looper, I didn't like it. And the reason being is because when it came out, there was a lot of hype about it.
Yeah.
And so I came out of it feeling very disappointed. This time around, I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic film. And there's so much, I guess because the way it was marketed when it first came out, it was marketed like this kind of big time action kind of movie sort of thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I guess I was expecting like a Terminator storyline that kind of was fast paced moving and not looking for the character depth and development that we do get in this film. Yeah. And this film is actually not action led, it's character led. And I think that because I was expecting this great big action led movie, that when I saw this and I got a character led movie, that's probably why I was disappointed. Yeah. But now that time's gone on and I've now revisited this, I guess it's 8 years since I've seen it because I saw it on its original outing. And I have to say it's bloody brilliant. I can't find a wrong thing to say about it. I have to sit, and I do think that the director, I am a fan of Rian Johnson's. The first time I saw one of his films, I didn't see Brothers Bloom. That wasn't the first one I saw. The first film I saw of his was a Joseph Gordon-Levitt film because I was always a big fan of his, and he did Brick. Yeah. Yeah. Which is an independent film, and I really liked that. It's something the critics were raving about. It was one of those sleeper kind of films, and I really loved it. So to revisit this, and then when I saw this, as I said before, I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah. And then watching it again, watching it again, this is like, oh my God, this is actually a brilliant film, and this is why I like Rian Johnson. So that I'm like, now I'm having a love fest with Rian Johnson and a love fest with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And I think that what is very, very intelligent about this film, as far as a filmmaker way of making this film, is you're dealt with the first third of the film with nothing but Joseph Gordon-Levitt playing Joe. Correct. And I think that if this was done by a lesser actor or a lesser screenwriter, what we would have got was, and someone who's looking for the money shot, which would have been Bruce Willis, because at the moment we know that Bruce Willis is a money shot. Basically, whenever Bruce Willis does anything, he is a big Hollywood actor or movie star, depending on how you think of his skills. I think I call him an actor because I actually think that he does give a good performance in everything that I see him. I've yet to find Bruce Willis where I actually don't like him in something. So
he plays a good action actor. I don't think.
I don't know. I saw The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable.
Well, yeah. I mean, Unbreakable.
But he is Bruce Willis in everything he does. So
why I say that is because he has an underlying dark humor. So he's not like a humorous actor. Like he's not like, haha, like he's not that. He's like more of an action, serious, earnest type of.
Plays everything cool.
Yeah, plays everything cool. And which is amazing with the way that Jason Gordon-Levitt plays the younger version of him. That is Bruce Willis in general. The characters that he plays, he's very suave. Though he is a hitman, he's like very much a collected. He wants to invest in his future. So he's doing what it appears to be is that he's doing this to be able to leave it behind him. He's almost waiting to close his loop. Like he has made this sort of declaration that once it's done, then I can move on and live my life. But then he kind of gets wrapped up in partying and things like that. But I think it's very interesting that he plays Bruce pretty well because that's what he always has sort of played as characters.
And I think that's what makes this movie really, really work, because I do think that if we got Bruce Willis too soon, I don't think that it would have had the impact that the character Joe has, that Joseph Gordon-Levitt's able to give to Joe. Because Joe actually sets something up. And what I do like about this story is that I love the way that Joe basically he's young, he's idealistic. He's got the world on his plate. I'm going to do this, and my life is going to be this. And this is what's going to happen. So when I become, when it ever comes to old Joe, because it's Bruce Willis, we're never known how old Joe is old Joe? Is it like he's 60s? He's 50s,
Well, it says
whatever age, whatever age old Joe is.
I think he's in, like, let's just say that Jason Gordon-Levitt is probably in his 20s, right? His late 20s, maybe. And then
old Joe's supposed to be what old?
It says like 25 years later, because it does give you a marker. It says like 3 years later, and he's
so
obviously
playing as 55. 50,
he obviously, what happens is he parties his monies away, right? And then he decides he has to become a hitman again. And he gets back into being like a hitman. But and what's interesting is he doesn't go to Paris. He wants to go to Paris, but his mob father is like, no, go to China, right? Or go to Shanghai, right? And he does, and he ends up going there, and he just kind of blows his money away with like drugs and partying and all that. And he has to become a hitman again. And then that's when he finds what he's sort of always been looking for, which is interesting.
And retribution.
Yeah. And he always says one of that, even the woman that he is occasionally sleeping with, but I don't know if you want to, like, she's a hooker or she's a stripper. I didn't really understand. Escort.
Piper Pierbo's character, Susie, the one that young Joseph's with.
Yes,
young Joseph. Yeah.
So even he has
basically sort of Coyote Ugly girl.
Yeah, and he has like these declarations for her that I think he wants to take her away from that, and she's just like, "Oh, honey, you have your job, I have my job," and he knows, like, I thought, oh God, are we going to spend this movie him trying to woo this woman? And he kind of quickly lets that go. Like, I think, and he just says, okay, because he realizes maybe I'm going to go there or go somewhere and find that. And what he finds is he's not running away from anything. It's just he's going to continue to try to avoid the things that he's been really wanting for his life, So what I find interesting about this is you get to see that play out. You get to see this future play out of this person. And well, actually before that, so he closes his loop, like his future self comes, he kills him, he closes the loop, and he lives this life. And then he meets this woman that forever changes him. And so when he's given this opportunity that he knows is going to come, he decides to change it. And I think it's like so brilliant. It's such a brilliant writing. I just said to myself, like, wow, because when you watch it, you're like, well, how is this even possible? Then you go, because he's already lived that experience. Like, he went on, he lived, he met someone, but he knew that someday he was going to kill himself. And that was his opportunity to, like, stop this from happening. And he was going to do anything possible to try to stop that from happening.
Well, see, that's what I also found about the genius of the film, because what we also have is an idealistic young Joe, and this is what my life's going to be, blah-de-da-de-da. And then when faced with the reality of what his life ends up being, idealistic Joe can't face it.
Yeah.
He can't cope with it. He's like, this is not what's going to happen. And the thing is, and then so that's where you have like this weird thing that you in time travel, which I think Terminator kind of hints at, but never really accomplishes this, where basically it's like, no matter what you do, you might not be able to change the future. You may not, you may not, and that makes you look at yourself, because I, working in psychiatry and stuff like this, the biggest phrase I do hear from people is, if I only could go back and do blah, oh, if I only hadn't done blah, or I should have done blah. And it did show you that it doesn't really matter, because this is going to be the end of it. This is what's going to happen. And at the end of the film, if it didn't end the way we were, he probably would have still ended up that way, no matter if all this stuff did happen, because idealistic Joe only knew one thing. Okay. And the thing is, we don't really know young Joe's backing story. We know that he was a wayward teenager. We know that he was trouble, and he joined this crime syndicate basically to get him off the streets, to become a professional person working in crime instead of the young person doing crime on his own back. So, and this is probably all he knew. I'm not saying that we don't know if he had an education. I don't think he was aiming to be a doctor and he fell into this, not from what they were saying. So he probably, if the story doesn't end up the way that it had done, he would end up as Bruce Willis no matter what decision he would have made, because it's almost like this is just destiny. This is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
No matter
and I
what.
mean, I also just think it's interesting because if he, this all banked on, Bruce Willis coming back to stop these children from becoming the potential threat of his future, it led him back down the same road.
Yeah.
So he went from being this very serene man who was living like a monk, basically, because where they end up showing where he ends up being, like, to coming back into like this mob man who literally obliterates the entire mob office of the loopers there, and is going after children and shooting and killing them to like stop the potential threat of the future. So you end up becoming the thing that you were running from in the first place, right? So the thing that you became was this great thing that you're trying to convince your younger self to be, but you're becoming the monster. And in a way...
And he creates the monster.
And well, in a way, he actually is the one who saves himself that way, but at a younger age. He self-sacrifices because he realizes... This is what I'm going to become, and this is what I'm going to do. And look what's happening. I have to close the loop, meaning I have to end myself in order for this to not ever happen. But what's curious about this is that child that he's trying to stop. I kind of agree with killing him because, the mother's love. I get it. She stops him.
Well, I don't think it's just the mother's love though. But
I'm just saying if what you're saying too is that you're going to become what you're going to become regardless. Like, so who's to say that the mother does all that she can to protect her son, and they're clearly living in a ruthless world. Right, which is she's out.
It's not a nice world. I mean, this is the future. We might as well just die now.
Yeah. So to me,
it's not a pretty world.
It would be interesting to even continue this story if they'd ever decided to do a sequel to this. Is that she's done everything she possibly can to protect her child and raise him the right way, the good way, the kind way, and have someone are they going to turn out to be this monster, right? That's going to, he's very powerful. I mean, and he's young. So imagine as he gets older, how much more powerful he's going to be, and Rainmaker, right? I think it's Rainmaker.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're also dealing with a mother that when he loses his temper, she has to lock herself in a safe. So that... So you're kind of thinking, well, obviously you don't really know how to get him out of this temper. I mean, okay, we do get a scene where she does talk. We were able to see him talk her down at the end. But see, this is where the film is quite interesting, because this is where we have a time travel problem, which I don't think that you can ever prevent. When we get to the story of the two Joes, young Joe and old Joe, we get a nice perfect loop and the way to end this. But we're also dealing with a film that deals with destiny, that no matter what you do, this is how you're going to become, no matter what you do in your life. So you have this destiny. So when we get the young Joe sacrificing himself, which gets rid of the old Joe, but at the same time saves the Rainmaker and to save Emily Blunt's character, Sarah, the question basically is that they're on their own destiny, though this may not have happened this time. Will something happen eventually to Sarah to ensure that the Rainmaker still exists?
Yeah.
It's a bit like if you tell people that, if you could go back in time and kill Hitler, would you? And the question basically is, well, yeah, maybe it's Hitler, but will something else rear its head to become that person?
Correct.
Because it's the world on this trajectory that this is what's going to happen. And I guess this is, if you look at the Terminator films, no matter how John Connors is saved, it seems like it just all it does is waylay the inevitable.
Well, and I don't know if you watched the newest one. It was very interesting because, spoilers for everyone. They kill him, and it's fate still finds its way, and it still finds another person, and it makes that person the new, and it doesn't make it the new John Connor. It makes it the new, what's her name? Sarah. So she's the Sarah. Like, Sarah is the one who's meant to protect the future and save the future. And so it was very interesting, but it was like, well, what caused the domino to fall? Like why did his death, like he gets killed in like Mexico because they're in Mexico, and then the Arnold Schwarzenegger character comes in and just shoots him. And it's at the age of when he was in the second movie. So it's like right away, like forever, that destiny's changed, right? But then why does it now default to the next person? And so,
and that's the problem that you do have with time travel to a certain extent. First of all, it makes your head hurt. I mean, it can give you such a headache because that's, what you're saying for Terminator. I know that we're slightly getting off loop here, but this all ties together, folks.
Yeah.
So if John Connor
we'll loop around.
yeah. So John, but as you're saying, I'm going to watch that this weekend actually. So I'm actually looking forward to that. I'm going to watch it because I watch all Terminator movies. So I lost my expectations after the third one. So I'll see what transpires.
This one was really good.
I do know the premise, but I know the premise. But the question basically is that John Connor gets shot, and we're talking about time looping and everything like this. Then the question is how does Reese go back in time to pregnant Sarah Connor like he did in the first one so she can give birth to John? Yeah. So if Reese never meets John, how so that's why I'm saying. So when you go to time travel, it's a bit like your headphones. If you don't have wireless headphones, old headphones, regular earbud headphones, and how basically it's just like about every month you kind of have to start untangling them, and you're thinking like, how the fuck do these get so tangled? Yeah. And that's what you can find with time travel sometimes. It's kind of all starts getting tangled, and it gives you just a headache. And so, which brings us back to Looper. So you do question basically that, he might have saved him from becoming this monster, but because we have dealt with that, if you're on this destiny, and no matter what path young Joe makes, he's still going to turn into old Joe. Even if he kills old Joe, he's still going to turn into old Joe.
Yeah.
And the question basically is that he might have saved the Rainmaker this time, but did he save but if that's the case, no matter what you do, you're on this trajectory of what your life's going to be. Then the question basically is, did he just put it off for something bad to happen to Sarah later on? Because we are, as you said, we are living in a desperate time. This is not a Technicolor future we're looking at. We're looking at like every horrible asshole in the future.
Well, again, I think a brilliant sequel to this would be a future Sarah, right? A future Sarah coming and going, I'm fucking killing this kid, whether you want it or not. And her being, what do you mean? And like, her saying, look, I really tried to raise him the right way. And, this came along. And then as it maybe because like TKs, as they call them, telekinetics, as they become more popular, the loopers decide to use them, right, as muscle. And say, hey, we want to really use them. And then they know he exists and they know what he's capable of. So we're going to send someone back to get him when he's young, right? And capture him before he becomes the monster he is, to use him to their advantage. But then you have the mom come back and be like, I'm sorry, I have to kill him. He's literally decimated the city. He did this, he did that, and it's her trying to convince her younger self, like, no, so I don't know. I think it's
interesting. It's an interesting concept. And that's what I think that I quite like about Looper. It is one of those movies. I do kind of wish they marketed it differently, but there's not we can do about that now. But it is one of those movies that you could go out with friends afterwards, go out to dinner, and you can have long conversations about it.
Yeah.
Because it is. And then we're also dealing with some fantastic acting going on. Paul Dano as Seth, the young Seth. And Paul Dano, where's he from? Was he from that? He's from a famous TV show or series. Wasn't it the one where the United States of Tara?
Wait, was he in that? I'm trying to think.
I don't know. But he's from some kind of television show, isn't he, Paul Dano?
No, I want to say he was I know he was in one of my favorite movies because when I saw him, I was like, oh my God, I love him. He's great. Let me look him up because I was literally
in Little Miss Sunshine.
So he was in, because I'm going to know, Little Miss Sunshine. Yes.
Yeah,
and he was also There Will Be Blood. I forgot that's another one he was in.
He
was so good.
Actually.
Oh my gosh, that movie. Oof.
But did he do a TV series as well at all?
He did. No, I don't see.
Okay. Oh, he's in a few episodes of The Sopranos, it looks like. So yeah, no. For some reason, I thought that he actually came from one of those high-rated HBO TV kind of series, but I am wrong, folks.
Yeah, I want to say I feel like I have to like go through because I feel like beyond those two things, I definitely saw him in something else that I was like, oh, I really like him as an actor. Same with Jeff Daniels too. He's just fantastic. I love Jeff Daniels.
Jeff Daniels, he's one of those actors that he's always very smooth, but he's always quite horrible.
Yeah,
he's horrible in terms of endearment.
Yeah,
he's like, yeah, that's what I like about him is that he's always so likable, but he's so horrible at the same time. It's like you really want to hate him, but you can never really hate him to the extent that you should be hating him. Have you ever noticed, like in terms of endearment, he's like that. He's like this horrible philanthropic husband, and basically he does, even when she's dying, he like leaves her.
Yeah.
We got him in this character here, and there's something quite smooth about him, and there's something quite nice about him, but there's this edge to Jeff Daniels, and I think, and this plays to Jeff Daniels' strength, and I have to sit there and say that, again, we have to go with the direction and the way this is filmed and the way this is written, that it would have been pretty easy just to have this black and white mob boss with no dimension anyway doing this, and we don't get that.
Yeah. And he's very eccentric, and you're kind of like, wait, you're the mob boss? You're kind of like, when you see him, you're like,
It's like Jeff Daniels in The Big Lebowski. It's kind of like Jeff Daniels does The Big Lebowski in Looper.
I have to say, one of the best scenes too. Well, there's a couple actually. The scene where the older version of the guy, is it Seth? Yeah. The older version of Seth is trying to get away, and he is just getting chopped up. It's such a trippy scene because he gets first a message like, come to this address, and he's trying to leave, and then it's like one finger gone, two finger gone, three, and then a nose, and then you're like, oh my god,
and his leg, and eventually he just disappears. And I thought that, to be honest, that was probably some of the most clever storytelling that we get, because what we are getting is a cursor of what's to come sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the thing is, because you don't really think, because let's be honest. Normally what we get is that, something happens now to the future self, and they kind of just fade away, sort of thing. But this is actually like, no, actually we get to see exactly what is going to happen. If something happens, then your future self applies now. Yeah. And basically something happens to you, you're actually saying that's going to happen to your future self. If something happens to you, you get hit by a bus and you're forever lame. But meanwhile, the old one's fine. Yeah. All of a sudden he's going to be like, you're going to have a crush hit for the rest of his life. And I thought that was very, very clever. And how,
and they use it
does
later.
The whole thing that Charles Dickens likes to do, foreshadowing. So.
Yeah. And then they use it later when it's almost like a comedic beat, because when old Joe comes to young Joe at the diner, and he was like, yeah, there's a waitress that's named Jane, right? And it's like, she has a shorter name. He's like, oh, yeah. Because the other waitress is like Beltrix or something, or Beatrix or something. It was like, there's like a shorter name you could have used. I would have totally got it.
I have to then say that seeing those two together in the diner is probably, because to be honest, we don't really get them together very often. If we do get them together, it's kind of a preamble to like some kind of action sequence or something like this. Yeah. But a scene where they're actually together, interacting, and that was clever. I have to dare say that was so well done. And as I said before, I don't know any director who would have faith enough in his two actors who are playing the same person who would be able to get away with doing that. Yeah, because I've said before, if you get a young person or old person, what you'll do is get two different actors, and you keep them apart. Yeah, you don't get scenes with them together, and this shows the genius of Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Bruce Willis, and the genius of the director to having so much faith in his actors that he knew that if he wrote this scene, he could get away with it.
Yeah.
Because I can't think of, if I wrote something like that, I don't think I wouldn't have faith enough that I'd be able to pull that off if I was going to direct it. The actors.
It's also the actors, right? Because I think there's such great dialogue between the two of them, and imagine it's like I was even going to propose this, like, what would you tell your older self, or what would your older self tell you, about like what you could have done better, right? And it's like each of them is trying to. Like, the motivation of younger Joe, because Joe is like, just fucking turn yourself in so I don't get killed, right? And then, older Joe is like, I need you to listen because you're going to become a bit of an asshole and you're going to have someone who's literally going to come in your life and make you a better person. So it's almost like,
but are there police in this world? I didn't see any police in this world.
No, but that's what I mean is what's interesting is there's no police, but they know that this organization is the one who are the long arm of the law, right? And he knows, he's like, I have to abide by what their rules are, and if I don't, then they're going to kill me. So I'd rather kill you because there's nothing to invest in, right? And so even like the whole line where he's like, is that woman, what does she look like? Let me see what she looks like, because then I'll go and I'll avoid her and I'll get someone else and then you'll forget her. Like he knows, like, if I just get you to comply, then you'll just, shut up, take the bullet and go down, because that's what I've known, right? That's what you've known. I knew that this is going to be how things are going to play out. And if you just shut up and comply, I can go on and live my life. And he even says, you've lived your life, you old fart. Like, basically like, let me live my own life, let me go on. And what he's trying to do is like, but you can do it sooner, right? You can do it now. You fucking junkie, you can do it now. Like you can, clean up. And it's such an interesting scene, because it's like, imagine you sitting across from your older self and you're trying to tell the older self, like, screw you. And then older self is like, no, screw you.
Well, to be honest, I think that if I went back in time and visited my 20-year-old self and told him what, things that have happened, from 25 to the current age I am now, I don't think I'd be like, yeah, right, that's really going to happen. Do you know what I mean? I think it's quite interesting, because I don't think you can go back in time and actually, and I know that in a Spielberg movie, we do tend sometimes get a bit of time travel where the older self comes in and it changes the person's life for good. Yeah. But I think Looper is more the reality of it. I don't think that, I think it's a bit like your parents telling you that if you do such and such, this is such and such is going to happen. And you don't believe a single word they said. But now that I'm actually at the age that my parents were, and I'm actually going to be bypassing, the next 10 years, I'll be bypassing the age that they were when they died. And I'm looking at it going, oh, they're right. You know what I mean? But it took me a long time until I got to a certain age where I actually started believing that everything they told me. By that time, I already made the mistakes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that I actually believed what they were telling me was true. It's after I actually lived it and experienced it for myself that I actually believed that what they told me was true. But before that point, I just, you don't know anything. You're just boring old, you know what I mean? And that's how you think. And I think that if your older self did go revisit your younger self, I'm pretty sure that's how you're going to react.
Well, yeah, and it makes sense because there's a part of him, even the story that he tells him about the Rainmaker, he doesn't, in a way he believes him, but he doesn't, because there's a part of him that he's going to kill the kid because he realized he sees what this kid has done and can do. Yeah, but he is just kind of like, no, he can be better. And I'm thinking, this is my also thought too, is why I guess I'm a little bit apprehensive about the child, is because he's crossed the threshold a few times. Like the mom.
He is Brightburn.
He literally, in my mind, I'm like, so the incident that his mom gets shot sends him over the edge. No, I think it actually happened a little further back. Like, you blowing your mom up, I'm sure that traumatized the kid to the point to where even you're not my mom, because can you imagine, like, his temporary mom is the one who took care of him and he blew her up, right?
Precisely. Yeah.
So how you separate yourself is, even if your mom comes back, like, you're not my mom, like, as a protection, like, you're not my mom. Like, I'm not going to have another mother because I blew the last one up. You know, like, you're going
to. But there's also the question that she's raising her son in her parents' house. And wasn't it her sister that took over the care?
Yeah.
And the thing is, my parents were living there at one time, and they're no longer there. So God, he might have blown everyone up for all we know. Yeah. Because she said that, my sister was here at, living, right, and she was raising my son with my parents. That's what she said at one point. And you're thinking, and then then they explain what happened to his sister, and like, well, what happened to your parents? Because she doesn't say. So you're thinking.
And by the way,
was it like a family explosion?
Well, and by the way, that scene is phenomenal, because I didn't see that coming. I mean, I knew that the kid was powerful, but the fact that he's falling down the stairs and, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, young Joe is running to catch him, and all Emily Blunt's character Sarah is doing is trying to save
Get out of the house.
And I was like, oh shit, because then it's like, we need to get out now because he's going to blow this room up. And it was like, I mean, that was crazy. That was like, wow, what a great scene. Like, what a fantastic scene.
You know what else I like about Looper? We were talking about a 2012 film, and we're dealing with CGI has taken over almost everything. And I like the simple fact that I did watch the making of this film, and everything in this film is done with practical effects.
Yeah,
everything is practical effects.
Yeah.
The
even the bike or whatever.
Scene. Yeah, the bike, everything. And I have to say my hats off to you, because it would have been so easy to just do the whole CGI thing.
Yeah,
and the thing is, and this is how good the practical effects are, that you're watching it and you just assume that it's CGI, don't you? And it's not at all. None of it's CGI whatsoever.
Yeah.
And after they say that's, I mean, when I saw the making of it, I actually had so much appreciation for this film afterwards, because I just assumed CGI. Now, when I see any kind of special effects, I just think CGI, because that's what people do.
Yeah.
And this has been going on since Jurassic Park. Everything's been CGI since then, since the late 90s.
He does a fantastic job too, tying in like a futuristic noir, just by even where young Joe lives. He's very much like a Dick Tracy, or like he's got that vibe about him, but just how he sets that all up in the scenes are fantastic.
Yeah, it does have that 30s to 40s film noir kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
The only thing missing is Humphrey Bogart going, and there I was, and I saw her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the only thing missing. But you do get it, because you get it through vision instead of through audio.
Yeah.
But we do get narration from young Joe.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, because it is, I think the year is like 2044. So though it is the future, it's not so futuristic that it's shoved down your throat, that it's like everything is chrome.
Let's show off how
everything is chrome and everything's technology, and everything is like, it's not over inundated. Like, I think you only get a little bit of the technology from the little device they carry around, which is like their phone or their tracker type of thing. And
and that's basically a tracker that could be very easily. We could have that in the next 2-3 years if we wanted to. You know what I mean? It wasn't that far advanced. Not like, Back to the Future 2, which now we're looking at, it's like, well, where's all this stuff we're supposed to have? So, that, and even the styles and everything like that are so, and I think, and for me, if I'm going to watch something that's going to be set in the future, I actually kind of prefer that a little bit more, something a bit more based in fact and
realism. Yeah.
Realism than something that's, unless it's idealized, like The Fifth Element. I love The Fifth Element, but that's like an idealized future that makes it, that's a really fun film. But if you're going to keep something in reality. Yeah, I do prefer that. And I like that the fact that everyone is homeless and horrible, and you're thinking, well, actually, and the thing is, you can watch and go, I can actually see that happening. I know that's sad. I don't, I'm hoping I'm dead.
Like the guy who like is like repairing his car, and someone runs up behind him and he takes his bag and he shoots him in the back. So like you said, there's no like police. There's like there's literally like no sense of law. They're like, yeah, kill whoever you want. That's the last person we have to deal with. So go ahead. It's really interesting.
And not to, bring this down anyone, but I mean, if you look at homelessness, I know from, let's sit there and say, 2000 onwards, it just multiplies and multiplies. So, if this is 2044. Yeah, I can see the homelessness being this out of control. I can just see it. You know what I mean? I'm not going to give my political beliefs here or ideas behind here, but if I'm looking at things from how I've looked from the last 20 years until what I see now, and I know that there doesn't seem to be any turn in the road, so yeah. I can actually see this happening. I mean, as far as that side of it goes.
The other thing is we don't know what the future is, right? So we're getting 2044, but then where they're coming back from. So like, again, this is another 30 years, 40 years after this. There must be some type of law that's instigated or put in place, because the reason why these people are sent back is because
the rainmakers.
The original reason why it was happening was because like basically people weren't allowed to kill people anymore, so they had to send their bodies back and kill them, and then basically they would get rid of the bodies because they haven't even been born yet. Right. So the people that were the potential mob people were the ones that were getting killed, and the loopers were the ones who were dealing with the contracts. And then once the contracts were done, then they killed themselves. Like basically they killed their older version of themselves, and then it kind of closes.
Yeah, which didn't quite, I mean, I guess that's I had to say that that's one of the things I had a difficulty wrapping my arm around. It's like, well, if they're your contract killer and why are you sending them?
Well, so again, like let's say I'm coming after you. You're a potential threat to me as a mob person, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to kill you here because the law is so strict here that.
Well, I can understand. I understand sending them back to be killed.
So you send them back.
Why the loopers who you've hired to
because
to do your cleanup job to kidnap people and send them back to kill them? I understand that. Then, but why get rid of your staff? What cause? When do you realize that they're no longer of use to you that you send them back, and why would you send them back? Because it's a bit unclear why they're sending the loopers back. Because by this time Bruce Willis is totally out of the frame. He's not even associated with anybody.
No, but I think it's like basically where the bodies, where what happened. So there must be a reason as to. Now, let's say even further in the future, maybe they can read your memories and they can see what you've done. And they could say, well, you've done this for this person, so we're going to put you on trial. Now you can give. So it's like basically you're.
Yeah, but was it the law that was doing it, or was it the syndicate that was doing it? Because I was under the impression it was the syndicate.
No, it is a syndicate, but there must be. What I'm saying is it's insinuating that there's some sort of law enforcement that doesn't allow any murder or any type of violence.
I understood that side of it.
So they're sending all those bodies and to be killed. They're sending everyone. But then what happens is once they've gotten rid of everyone, now who they're sending back is all the people who did all the killing. So then you're closing that loop, right? So now definitively, if you're the mob boss, then that it closes that loop, and so now no one can,
But I'm saying it's kind of a weird loop, especially But then, I mean, I know that reason why Bruce Willis gets sent back is because he gets a phone call that gives him the coordinates of who the King Master is.
The Rainmaker.
The Rainmaker. Sorry, who the Rainmaker is, and because he gets a phone call, and that's pretty much why he gets sent back. So I understand that one. I didn't quite understand why they sent old Seth back. Because if he's still a hitman for people.
No, but
did he have information?
I think he lived his life, right? And then they just came to him as a mob. And this is what's interesting, I find interesting, is you've killed yourself already, right? So you've killed your future Keith yourself. Now it's like you're done. Like your contracts, you're done to go live your life.
But you're still gonna have to live those 25 years before they.
No, but I'm saying
again.
so you get to a point. You get to a point where someone comes knocking on your door and says it's your time, and you're like, okay, because you've been given the leniency to be able to now do it.
Well, see, if it was the law that did that, I kind of understand that. But if it's the crime syndicate doing it, that's why I had a hard time thinking, because wouldn't it make more sense to send your future self back to kill your younger self? But then I guess you couldn't do that, because if you did that, then your older self wouldn't.
Correct. So, plus you couldn't do any of those contracts. So they might still potentially use you, meaning, let's say they release you, because it seemed almost like the moment, like they gave you an example of when that happened, and the guy comes in and he's like, oh, he just closed his loop. What do you mean? And then they show it, and it's like, okay, guys, I'm going. Like, I got my bars. I'm gonna leave now, and it kind of like he gets to live the rest of his life, but he knows what his fate is because he killed himself, right? Yeah. So it's like,
which is, but I say it's kind of a weird concept. And the thing is, I'm not, I'm not talking about the concept of the film, because it plays in the film, but it's not the main reason of the film, sort of thing. Yeah. But if I look at it in like those kind of terms, it's a bit like you work where you work at the moment. You work there for 25 years, you get retirement age, and then they send you back, and you have to, and then your younger person who's just going to start at the job where you're working at the moment, kills the older person because you're retiring. And that's kind of like, so you're thinking to yourself like, okay, that's what I'm saying. You just kind of think, oh, well, why don't you just let the person live? I mean, they already lived their life. What are they going to do? You know what I mean?
Because to me, I think it's like, again, we don't know why they basically consider you a potential threat, because if, like in the mob, right? You are in the family, you're not in the family. I guess you could snitch
and give them 25 years of bad history. So,
then you could say, like, just go, like, and by then they might have this technology where they can extract the memories, because again, there's no body, right? So they can extract your memories and say, oh, here's a transaction that you did for so-and-so, and here's a body, and here, and they can
but this is where we have it. So if you know that you're killing your loop, and then you go on and live your life, you think that when you got to that age where they know that they kidnapped you, you think at one point you quit and go into hiding because you already know that you killed yourself, that you killed the future self that's been sent back. Do you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. It's kind of like, that's where
you don't know when it's going to happen.
Your brain hurts.
That's the thing is, because you don't know when it's going to happen, because you haven't seen any of that. So it is brilliant, because it's like, to me, it's like, yes, I would.
But to be honest, though, if something happened, and if I was a hitman, and the thing is, you knew that you killed your loop because they had all this money tied to their back, or whatever, these bricks, these gold bricks or whatever they are, or titanium or whatever. And if you shot someone and then you turn them over and you realize these bricks are, I would look at my face and go, okay, well, obviously I must be this old if I've just killed my loop. So therefore I know that at some point I'm going to have to go in hiding or whatever. But then again,
can you imagine you turn yourself over, you look at yourself and you're like, oh my God, I'm only, I'm only 50. Well, fuck that. I want 30 more years. So you, like you said, you're like, okay, no. Or
go in hiding, and just make sure, change your future.
Or here's the other thing I would do. I'd totally take like a pen and I would scratch on my arm. I'd find a way to be alone and scratch on my arm what day I died. And then be like, oh, wait a minute. Oh my God, I died on whatever. And be like, Yeah. So there's a workaround.
At 45, go into hiding.
Yeah, exactly. No, they break in, you just write, they just came for me. Today's date is da 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 da. So okay, from here on out, I gotta go into hiding. I gotta go into
So that's what I found a bit. But then again, I suppose at your younger self again, just like, you think that probably when you're 20, 25 years old, you think 50 is old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So therefore he's like, well, I'm going to kill this person because they're old anyway. Not realizing that, you realize that 50 is not that old when you become 50.
I mean,
I'm still young.
You know what? I also think about it is like, I go back to the other character and his name slips my mind, but he's the one that was so jacked. He had a broken foot. He had a broken hand. He was so devoted. Yeah, he was so devoted that he would have literally done anything. He would have been like, fine, you want me to kill myself? Okay, fine. You want me to so I think you get people whose lives are so messed up as kids that they actually were saved by these people, and it's like, it's their family.
I agree with the whole, because Abe was like almost like a dad figure, wasn't he? At one point, I actually thought that was his son at one point, and then after a while, I realized it wasn't, because it's the way that he was acting, sort of thing, trying to always please him.
I look at it that way too. That for some of them, it's what you signed up for, right? You know exactly what you signed up for. There's a protocol. You're going to get paid. You'll have a great life. He clearly had a great life. He had a beautiful apartment, had a great car, dressed stylishly, got as many drugs as he wanted. He had this life. He knew what he had to sacrifice in order to have that life. So I think it's something he signed up for, but then what was interesting, you saw he wanted more. He wanted to learn French. He wanted to go to, France. And so he had this other life that he was already planning to live after this was over.
I guess it's a story about when you have this idealistic, and let's sit there and say that you go to college and you're going to have this fantastic career and you get your liberal arts degree, and then you find yourself being a waiter for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I can speak to that. I'm just saying. Just saying, y'all. It's a great goal to have, but just know.
I got a PhD in journalism because I wanted to be the great American author. I wanted to be like John Irving, and look at me now. I'm dealing with people dying from the coronavirus. Yay! So, I think we're at the point where we can actually get to our final thoughts. So, what are your final thoughts of Night of the Hunter and your final thoughts of Looper and our guilty versus guilty month?
I'm glad that we did both of these. I love Looper. I've now seen it probably like 3 or 4 times. Night of the Hunter was new for me, and it was apparently his one and only film, so it was like a one-hit wonder for him.
Yeah, it's a shame, really.
It is a shame because it didn't get any negative acclaim. I think the only one who gave really negative acclaim was like the churches, because they didn't like how it viewed their religion, but they both are just like two pieces that you get a type of noir that is like silent picture noir versus a futuristic noir. So there's a coupling that's happening there. You get sort of with Night of the Hunter, this good versus evil, right versus wrong. In Looper, you get a similar sort of theme that's happening with wanting to change your destiny, wanting your destiny to be better, or wanting to secure your destiny at any cost. So you kind of are dealing with that same sort of morality of, I was a bad person who became a good person to become a bad person to become a good person. Like it's a loop, literally, in its sense. And so I find that these two couple each other very well. I recommend them. I'm definitely going to read the screenplay for Looper, and I might even read the novel of Night of the Hunter too as well.
Yeah, I highly recommend the novel Night of the Hunter. I actually really did like that book. I like that book a lot more than I thought I was. But I like basically Night of the Hunter. It's up there with my favorite. I actually think Night of the Hunter is actually a better film than Citizen Kane. I do like Citizen Kane, but Citizen Kane, I feel it's always a bit of work to watch. For Night of the Hunter, I can just let it wash over me, and there's something about it just really intrigues me and captures me, and I love. There's an artistic flow to Night of the Hunter where you're seeing this. And as I said before, as we were saying, it's a shame that this director didn't make any other films, because it would have been fantastic to see what he would came up with next, sort of thing. And even though there are things that, when I first saw this film, as we discussed before, that I thought there were faults to it, but the more time I see it, they're not faults; they're actually added. And then actually discussing it today. It does, coming up with the memory snippets and that, and thinking about that, it actually does make a lot of sense. And now I actually have a more appreciation. Looper, I have to sit there and say that if John hadn't recommended it for this month. I probably would have gone through and think, oh, I've seen that movie and just left it there. But now, since I've been able to reevaluate it and look at it from a new set of eyes after the hype is gone, it's I have to say it's a brilliant film. There's not one thing of fault about it. Time travel films, I do like them, but they do give me a headache if I think too hard about them. And, I think I do have a Looper headache now because actually trying to think of why I'm not trying to make it all sense in my head. But the way that it is presented, we're representing a futuristic science fiction film that's baited in reality. And I think that's what Looper sells itself for, because we have strong characters with a strong dramatic center at the whole piece of it, and it all makes sense. And even if you try to think about it too hard, you can still find more sense in it. Unlike other time travel films where if you do think too hard about it, they kind of all fall to pieces after a while. Yeah. And Looper doesn't really fall to pieces. And any time that you can get Joseph Gordon-Levitt in a film doing it, and I have to say, I've yet to see a bad performance from this guy.
Yeah.
I've even seen films that, I haven't particularly thought were excellent, but he was excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even the one where he can have a relationship because all he did is watch porn all day. I actually like that film. Though there could have been more nudity. So remember that, Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
I know. Next time, give your fans what they want, please.
That's what they want.
Show us your loops.
So if you did, on a side note, did you ever see Joseph Gordon-Levitt when he did that lip sync battle?
No.
Where he does Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation.
Now I have to look this up. Oh my God.
Brilliant.
I have not. Brilliant. I have to see this now.
So, well, do you want to do the end credits?
Yes.
Would you like? Okay, so John, go away with the end credits.
Sometimes you need a prayer or maybe a guiding force to show you the way. On one hand, it could offer you their love and devotion, while on the other hand, you just might be gripped by the wrath of hate. Nowadays, it feels like we are all a little lost, but at least your past self isn't trying to kill your future self yet. But have no fear. We are here for you, the Literary License Podcast, to keep it light, have some fun, and remind you to head on over to our website at llpodcast.com to check out all of our past episodes, sign up to be a patron, and read our reviews of books to screens and everything in between. For our next episode, we'll be covering the 1955 film, and I need your help with this, Keith. La Diabolique.
Les Diaboliques.
Les Diaboliques. I was like, Les Diaboliques.
If you want to speak French, speak it with your bottom lip out.
As always, thank you for downloading, liking, and sharing the Literary License Podcast. And remember, just because you have to have social distance doesn't mean you have to be antisocial. Unless you're a monk, but that's a whole other story. Okay, bye, folks. Bye.
Bye. Keep safe, folks.
Keep safe.